Medicare appeals system, folks, is broken. It is absolutely broken. It was crazy to begin with. I mean, 5 levels of appeal. Are you kidding me? Even in the civil system, there's only 3 levels. I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court, for heaven's sake, is like the 3rd level. And you have 5 in Medicare? It's crazy. I don't know who invented this system, but it's absolutely crazy. And usually, we are only trying to get to that 3rd level, okay? The 1st level is worthless. It's almost always a rubber stamp. 2nd level is worthless, rubber stamp. You get no hearing at those first 2 levels. You get no due process, hardly. And the decision makers are all CMS PACs, basically. And so it's a horrible thing at those first 2 levels. The 3rd level, you finally get a hearing. You get an independent person, theoretically, who's a lawyer and a judge. And at that level is where we're winning about 70 to 80% of the time. But here's the problem. CMS earlier this year imposed a moratorium on ALJ appeals. And they said, you know what, for 28 months, we're not even going to schedule you for a hearing. And after you're scheduled, it's going to be maybe another year until you get a hearing or a decision. Okay? It's an absolute disaster because if you get hit, say, with a $200,000 overpayment, at the first 2 levels of appeal, Medicare cannot recoup from you. But at the 3rd level, once you get to that level, they can start taking that money back from your reimbursements. So just think about that, $200,000 going out of your cash flow while you're waiting your 3 or 4 years for your appeal. It's a travesty that they can be taking your money while at the same time telling you you cannot have your appeal. There are class action lawsuits that have been started by the American Hospital Association, by certain other trade groups. I've encouraged APMA to be part of that. It's not happened yet. I wish they would. But this is an absolute disaster. And anyone who's unlucky to have a big overpayment and stuck in this system, you know, that's a big takeaway today, is the Medicare appeal system is broken. And yes, we can win eventually, but you may be bankrupt by the time we win. And I have had doctors go bankrupt waiting for their appeal. So it's an absolute disaster. And the other takeaway from that is, okay, if the appeal system is such a disaster, we need to do everything we can to not get in the system in the first place. And that's where compliance programs, self-auditing, all of these things are so important because you don't want to get in the system. So if it's a little painful to take some of those steps, you really need to take them. You need to be self-auditing. You need to be figuring out on your own that you've got a problem. And you know, it's so disappointing to me. I go into offices, I have my coding expert with me, we've looked at 100 records, and we tell the doctor, you know what, you're absolutely billing this code wrong. And usually for very fundamental reasons. And the doctor will say, wow, we've been doing it that way for 15 years. Really? How did you learn to do it that way? Well, the doctor I bought my practice from said that's the way you did it. I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've heard that story. And all with the best of intentions, okay? No one was trying to do anything wrong. They were taught that way by the older doctor, and that's how they've done it. And you know what? They could have prevented that if they had done some basic compliance steps, if they had hired an independent auditor, certified professional coder, paid them just a few $100s to look at a small sample of their charts. They could have been told early on, you know, that there was a problem. But no one wants to take the time, spend a relatively small amount of money to do this basic compliance step of, you know, doing some self-auditing. You can discover these problems before the government discovers them. And you, again, you don't want to get in the system because the system's broken right now. It's just horrible.